Hello friends, in this video we will be solving two more problems on root locus. Let us begin. Let's start with the first question. So the first question says g of s h of s, that is loop gain, is given. You have to check whether the given point, that is s equal to minus 2 plus j5, is on root locus or not. Also determine the value of respective k. So let's begin with this. If you remember, we have already studied in one of the rules of root locus, that is, you have to check the magnitude condition and angle condition for a particular point if it is present on the root locus. For example, we have studied like this: the given g of s h of s can be given as, in general, k times numerator polynomial of s divided by denominator polynomial of s. If you take a magnitude of it, it should be equal to 1, as well as we have seen the angle of numerator polynomial of s divided by denominator polynomial of s should be equal to what? It should be equal to 180 degree. So this is what we called as a magnitude condition, and this is what we called as an angle condition. So for particular value, let us say s equal to s1, if I substitute, so s is replaced with s1, then these both conditions must get satisfied. If it is required to check whether the given point is on root locus or not, preferably you can go for angle condition. Preferably you must go for angle condition, and whenever you want to also find the value of k, then you should go for magnitude condition. So I hope you understood the application of angle condition and magnitude condition. Whenever a particular point needs to be checked whether it is present on root locus or not, use angle condition. And whenever you want to find also the value of k, then for that purpose you can use the magnitude condition. One more thing, in angle condition I have not included k because k stands for system gain, which is constant, and angle contribution by the constant is always 0 degree. So even though you specify or you do not specify, it really doesn't matter. And if this confuses you, you can simply make like this the magnitude condition as whatever g of s h of s given, check its magnitude should be equal to 1. This is also called as a magnitude condition. And of course the angle of g of s h of s should be equal to 180 degree. So just I want you need not to get confused with the generalized form. You can go for this also. So let's go for this g of s h of s, which is k upon s into s plus 4. So I'm writing that loop gain again. Now let me substitute the value of s, that is minus 2 plus j5, because this is the point that I need to check. So what I'll do over here, my g of s h of s will become k whole divided by minus 2 plus j5 multiplied by minus 2 plus j5 plus 4. So k upon minus 2 plus j5, let me keep it as it is, and 4 minus 2 will be positive 2, so it is 2 plus j5. Now we have to take the angle. Okay, so this is the final g of s h of s that I have. I have to now take an angle of g of s h of s. So whenever you have to take an angle, and if something is present in the form of ratio means some numerator and denominator, take angle of both, that is angle of numerator also and angle of denominator also. But in denominator, as you can see, there are two terms, so for both the terms you can take angle separately. I hope you understood that point. Next, so whenever you are taking an angle, please remember, when angles are really getting multiplied, then you have to actually add it, and whenever angles are present in the form of ratio, then you have to subtract their angles. What do I mean? Let me write it. So you can write this angle of g of s h of s equal to angle of K minus. Why minus? Because these two angles are in the denominator. So minus angle of minus 2 plus J5 plus because they are multiplied over here in the denominator, angle of 2 plus J5. I'm sure you know that how to take an angle. It is actually tan inverse of imaginary part upon real part. But as you can see, there are variations. Like over here, as you can see, it is a negative real part. So let me tell you, it is not blindly tan inverse of imaginary upon real. So to actually go ahead with this, I just want you people to know basics. Most of the people, but let me make sure that I do not go ahead without actually discussing these basics, okay? So assume this is 4-quadrant system. This is positive real, this is negative real, this is positive imaginary, this is negative imaginary. I'm sure you are aware of it, right? So when you are in first quadrant, what is meant by first quadrant? First quadrant means the real part as well as imaginary part, both of them are positive. Both of them are positive. Then the angle is simply phi. The angle is simply phi. And if it is in the fourth quadrant, let's say, then the angle is simply minus phi. So I'll tell you how to calculate phi. Meanwhile, over here, I can write it is 180 minus 5. That is in second quadrant. Second quadrant where your real part is negative and imaginary part is positive. And whenever you are in third quadrant, that is real as well as imaginary, both of them are negative, then you have to take minus of 180 minus 5. As you can see, it is just inverse of this. It is just inverse of this. The moment you cross the x-axis, as you can see, it is just becoming negative of the angle which is just above its quadrant, okay? So how to calculate phi? Please pay attention. Phi is always, it is tan inverse of mod of imaginary upon mod of real. That is, imaginary and real can be positive or negative. You have to always consider its magnitude. Fine. So in that respect, try to understand, I'm talking about this. That is minus 2 plus J5. Please concentrate on this, minus 2 plus J5. Now where this minus 2 plus J5 will come, the real part is negative, imaginary part is negative, meaning that it will come in second quadrant. So in second quadrant, I can write its angle as what? It is 180 minus tan inverse of imaginary upon real. So what is imaginary? 5. What is real? Now you should not say real is minus 2. It is 2 only, because you have to take only magnitudes. I hope you understood my point. Whereas for 2 plus J5, the real part is also positive, imaginary part is also negative. In first quadrant, it is simply phi. So it is, tan inverse of imaginary upon real, which is nothing but phi by 2. Okay. Next, when I'm saying angle of K, I kept saying that angle of K means it is always 0 degree, because angle contribution by the constant is always 0. I'll prove it why. Because if it is just K, can I treat K as K plus J0? It is one and the same thing, guys, right? So now it is tan inverse of imaginary upon real, but since imaginary is 0, so I can say imaginary upon real will be also 0, and tan inverse of 0 degree is always 0 degree. Fine. So let me write this angle of G of S, H of S again on the next slide. So you need not to worry. I'll copy the same thing over here. Angle of G of S, H of S, which is equal to angle of K minus, it was 180 minus tan inverse of imaginary upon real, which is nothing but 3 by 2 if I'm not wrong. No, it is 5 by 2. Plus it was tan inverse of 5 by 2. So as you can see clearly, this tan inverse of 5 by 2, tan inverse of 5 by 2 will get cancelled, and ultimately the angle of G of S, H of S is equal to how much? It is minus 180 degree. But if you actually see the condition, that is nothing but an angle condition. The angle condition is that angle of G of S, H of S is equal to 180 degree. But right now we don't have 180 degree, it is minus 180 degree. But let me tell you, okay, graphically 180 degree and minus 180 degree can be considered as the same axis. I repeat, Mathematically 180 degree or minus 180 degree can be considered as the same axis. So even though it is not positive 180 degree, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So still in this case, I can say that the angle condition is satisfied. I'm sure you understood this problem. Angle condition is completely satisfied, but then our problem is not completed yet. You have to also find the value of k. And if you remember, I told you very particularly, whenever you want to calculate the constant k, then you have to go for a magnitude condition. So let us recall, guys, what was the magnitude condition? It is simply mod of g of s h of s. That is, magnitude of g of s h of s must be equal to 1. So what was g of s h of s? Let me write it again. It was nothing but k upon s into s plus 4 magnitude should be equal to 1. But we are actually doing it for a particular point. So let us substitute the value of s. So what was the value of s? S was minus 2 plus j5. Let me substitute. So k upon minus 2 plus j5 multiplied by minus 2 plus j5 plus 4, this should be equal to 1. That is the condition. So whenever you are taking magnitude, then in case if it is in the form of ratio, then take magnitude for numerator also, denominator also. So let me do this. So it is simply magnitude of k upon magnitude of, now there are two brackets, you have to take their magnitudes individually, which is minus 2 plus j5 magnitude, as well as, let us solve this. 4 minus 2 is what? It is 2. So it is 2 plus j5, and this is equal to 1. So obviously when I take mod of k, it is simply k, isn't it? Generally actually k is k plus j0, and whenever you take a magnitude of it, it is under root of real part square plus imaginary part square. So ultimately what you get is k. This is how mod of k is equal to k. So this is what I have given you for a reference. So obviously modulus of k is k divided by, now if I take the mod of this, that is, mod of this is nothing but mod of a plus gb is what? It is under root of a square plus b square. So ultimately it becomes under root of 4 plus 25. Then similarly 2 plus j5 will have the same magnitude, that is 4 plus 25, and this should be equal to 1. So this is ultimately, 4 plus 25 is 29. 4 plus 25 over here also 29. Root of 29 multiplied by root of 29, it is 29. So that 29 in the denominator gets shifted to the right. So k becomes 29. And finally we have the answer for k also. I'm sure you have understood how to tackle such problems. Whenever they ask you the value of k, go for magnitude condition. Whenever they ask you whether the particular point is present on root locus or not, please go for angle condition without fail. So let us start with the last problem that we have. So look at this problem very carefully. The open loop transfer function given g of s h of s as k into s plus 1 whole square divided by s plus 2 whole square. Show that the root locus lies on the circle. So root locus lies on the circle. It means that the root locus is itself a circle. Let us try to prove this. Let us try to prove this. So what I'll do first, for given g of s h of s, it is always advisable to have a pole 0 plot first so that we get an idea how root locus will really look like. Let's do that. So first of all, we will look at zeros by equating numerator to 0. You'll get s plus 1 the whole square equal to 0. It means there are repeated zeros at minus 1. So I'll say s1 equal to minus 1 and s2 also equal to minus 1. So these are zeros. And now let's look at poles. It is a similar situation, that is s plus 2 whole square equal to 0. it indicates S1 equal to -2 and S2 equal to also -2. So these are poles and zeros. There are 4 poles and 4 zeros. Please see to it. Now number of poles are equal to number of zeros. I repeat, number of poles equal to number of zeros. If you remember, for a practical system, we kept saying that number of poles are always greater than number of zeros. So remaining poles, that is excessive poles, I mean to say, which is nothing but p minus z branches, goes to infinity. So over here, p and z value is same. So p minus z equal to what? Come on. P minus z is equal to 0. What does that mean? None of the branch of root locus will go to infinity. None of the branch will go to infinity. Reason, for every pole, even though the root locus start at every pole, it has its respective 0 to terminate itself, because there are 2 poles and 2 zeros, so they compensate each other here. So let's have a pole 0 plot, and then we will see and we will try to guess whether the root locus is really forming a circle or not. So look at zeros, they are present at -1. So I have 2 repeated zeros at -1 and 2 repeated poles at -2. So before we start discussing, first of all, we need to see whether on real axis root locus is present or not. Okay. So first of all, try to concentrate the area between 0 and -1. Try to concentrate the area between 0 and -1. Do you think the root locus will lie there? Obviously not, because to the right hand side there is absolutely no poles and zeros. So meaning that this 0 to -1 area can be considered as not root locus area, isn't it? Let us discuss about the line between -1 to -2. So negative real axis between -1 and -2, do you think even there the root locus will even lie? Absolutely not possible, because to the right hand side there are 2 zeros and they should be odd in numbers for your kind information. So there is no root locus area between -1 to -2. Let us talk about the remaining area, that is from -2 to -infinity. So being observer, if you count the number of poles and number of zero to your right hand side, again you are getting even number, meaning that even this is what we call as not root locus area. So your root locus cannot lie on negative real axis, right? Now try to understand the problem of root locus. Root locus absolutely cannot lie on negative real axis. And again, from the every pole, the root locus area or root locus branch starts, and at respective 0 it ends. The problem is that even though we have number of poles and number of zeros to be equal, all of them are available, but there is no root locus area present on negative real axis, meaning that this root locus will be present in the air. Try to understand my point. Let us assume one of the pole from which, let's say, the root locus starts and it is going to end, or it is going to terminate in one of the zero. And then for the second pole, from the second pole, it is going to terminate into second zero. So this is the only possible root locus I can draw. There is no other possible situation. I hope you understood my point. Can't you see clearly that it is a circle? It is a circle. So we have already shown the root locus is lying on the circle. It is lying on the circle, as you can see clearly. Let us try to figure out, if this is a circle, what can be the radius, what is the center, etc. So for the circle, I would like to know two things, that is a center. So center would be over here. So between -1 and -2, what is the possible center? Between -1 and -2, there is only one possible center, which is -1.5, meaning that the center I can write as -1.5 comma j0. Yes or no? Because whenever you are describing the center of circle, you should actually describe x as well as y coordinate. So I have actually maintained both, that is the x coordinate also and y coordinate also. At the same time, you should define what is the radius also. So what is the radius of this circle? Okay, you can check what is the radius of this circle. From 1.5 to 1 distance, if you see, it is 0.5. Yes or no? So obviously radius has to be 0.5. So as you can see, I have proved that, I have shown that the root locus is lying on the circle. So this is how you have to tackle the problems. I'm sure you have understood both the problems. Of course, we will solve extra problems also, but then at the end of completing the syllabus. Thank you.